Good afternoon, everyone. I hope your day is going well, and welcome to the latest live training or executive briefing, as some have called it. If your calendar looks like a war zone or you are having some crazy technology challenges like I was today, then or every meal just feels like this negotiation between convenience and control, and you're just trying to fit it in, then I think today's briefing video training is going to be highly beneficial for you. And so if you're running a company, you're building something meaningful. Um, and on the other side of things, though, your body's running on fumes a little bit. Maybe your body's breaking down a little bit. You're carrying a little excess weight. Either of those scenarios, today's training will help with that. And it's going to be a little different than probably the typical advice that you hear a lot of times as we talk about our subject and go into it. But before we dive into these three actions, and for those even with the busiest of schedules, these three actions are really going to help you lose weight. And so I'm going to quickly introduce myself. My name is Julian Hayes II. For those not familiar, I am the founder of Executive Health, and we're on a mission to help optimize business leaders. And I believe that health is our most underutilized competitive advantage as leaders. It's literally $1 billion asset. And most are unfortunately managing it like a liability or at best passively. And I also believe that business leaders should operate and think of themselves as high performing athletes. So you're going to be strategic, resilient, and have a world-class team that you're surrounded by. And at the end of the day, I care about impact, family, and sovereignty. And health is the absolute primary driver behind all three of those things. And I've seen way too many leaders that are winning in business. They're winning on the outside. They're winning on socials. But behind closed doors, it's a little bit of a different story. It's a little bit of a dumpster fire, if I'm being quite frank. So they're exhausted, they're depleted, they're disconnected. And if any of this resonates with you, you're interested in it, send me a DM and we will set up a time to talk. But now I want to go ahead and get into today's presentation. And as I mentioned earlier, we are talking about weight loss, but weight loss in particular as it relates to business owners, entrepreneurs, executives, and people who just have a lot of meetings and that dominates their time. And so it's a little harder when you are time constrained with weight loss. And so the first thing here is when it comes to weight loss as a A-level decision maker, some of the typical advice that you're going to hear is, well, I hope it's gone, but I think I see it sometimes. It's, I want you to eat less, just reduce your calories, just start moving more, exercising more. That advice is cool. But it's very general and it's not necessarily true. And it needs more nuance. And you don't have to do Orange Theory every day. You don't have to go to CrossFit every day. You don't have to go carnivore. You don't have to do vegan. You don't have to do any of those things. Now, if you want to do those things, then great. I absolutely go do your thing. But that's not the most important thing. You know, as high-level leaders with major responsibilities on your plate, infrastructure and predictability is what you're really seeking. Those two things right there are absolutely essential. And so as it pertains to fat loss, yes, it's not just a time problem. If it were, I mean, you have different calendar hacks that you can do, different productivity tools that could help solve this thing of time. Because, I mean, if you think about it, to be where you are right now, you know how to prioritize, you know how to execute, but there's something deeper there. There's something deeper a lot of times that causes the issues of weight gain and for it to stick around. And that's nervous system. And so your nervous system is under siege, as I call it. And I've been really thinking about this whole nervous system thing, this whole parasympathetic, sympathetic thing. And even when I work out now, I have started to move myself away from thinking that I'm training my musculoskeletal system. I'm training my cardiovascular system. I like to think I'm training my nervous system. And in a business context, if you think about this, you're in back-to-back meetings all day. These things are not just time consuming. It's not just time consuming when you are working on projects, when you're doing various creative projects. There's a emotional and there's a cognitive expense that comes along with those things. So every decision, every fire you put out, every conflict you mediate, every not so nice comment that you probably have to deal with, every little thing that you're scrutinized for and that you pay attention to, all these things leave what I call like a little residue on there. And that residue is going to slowly but surely compound and build up. And this is where we get into what we call the hidden costs, the invisible tax. So we are always on as leaders. Anyone with any sort of ambition is typically going to always be on, even when you're on vacation or holiday. There's a part of you that's still going to be on. And so this is not just a mental, it's a complete physiological thing as well. So, of course, your stress baseline is creeping up. Cortisol can potentially get dysregulated. Sleep can become fragmented. Cravings increase. Oftentimes, maybe some people stress eat. And these are not just inconveniences. Once again, these are biochemical things, and they are going to compound fast. So there's a lot of invisible things that are influencing us that we need to be aware of. And so here's the trap once again when it comes to executive weight loss and that whole ordeal. There's a subtle trap that I've seen some people fall into. And this is what I call delaying health to some imaginary future. I'm going to put it off because it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal right now. After all, I feel okay. I might not feel optimal, but I don't feel just terrible. And so, maybe once this deal closes, this big M&A thing I'm working on, maybe once the team stabilizes and we get some of this more infrastructure on this side, maybe once this product ships, maybe once this next thing, and we keep adding that there. Because the interesting thing with health is you can completely treat your body like crap for a week or two, and sometimes even longer. And it's not necessarily like you're going to just notice, oh man, my health's just completely falling apart in this time. Health moves slower. So a lot of times the damage or the negligence that we do today, we may not feel those consequences until months and years down the line. So that's the little paradox with that. But anyway, with this imaginary future that we are delaying, what we're doing here is we keep moving the goalposts. And as I mentioned, the most dangerous part about our health is that it's invisible. Our health is invisible until it's not invisible. We don't see anything for a lot of us until we have some kind of labs or some kind of weight gain where we see a noticeable difference in some of the outfits that we wear, some of the suits, some of the dresses that we wear, or when we go to the beach, we don't look so appealing, to put it nicely. Now, here's the thing though. Most of the entrepreneurs, the executives and leaders, in my time so far, I've never met one who's just completely lazy and say, I'm not doing none of this. Most of these people are already working out somewhat consistently. Whether it's ideal, whether it's effective, that's a whole different story. But they're doing something already. So working hard is not the thing. Negligence is not the issue. After all, these people have built teams, built companies, families. So you figured out in some sort of fashion how to lead in chaos, especially those who had to lead and almost reinvent themselves on the fly during the pandemic. So making complex decisions daily, this is also something that is familiar to you. But what's missing from even the best performers, those whose health doesn't match the level of their business success, is, once again, one of my favorite words, you have infrastructure for everything except yourself. And so that's the key part that we have to keep in mind. So if you have systems for operations, but your most vital infrastructure, which is yourself, oftentimes you're flying blind, or maybe at best you're flying through some fog, and so you can only see so far ahead. So there's no dashboard, no support team, no structural feedback loop. There's vague, well-intentioned effort, and maybe an even vaguer sense of how it's actually going. So when things do slip, when your energy does tank, or your sleep does deteriorate, or your metabolism does stall, maybe you're doing all these things. You're like, man, I'm putting in the effort and everything, and it's just not working. And this is where it starts to feel personal. This is where it starts to get a little frustrating at times for people. But, you're not the problem. And I always tell people it's not personal. I think Dion said that, right? It's not personal, it's business. Something like, no, wait a minute, it is personal. I don't keep up with sports, so I probably messed that up. So let's not worry about that. But anyway, if you've been stuck, you're not the problem. It's not a character issue. It's not like your genetics, your genes won't let you do this thing. It's none of those things at all, actually. It's a systems failure. And these systems can be rebuilt. So what you need, and I'm going to hammer this into people's head, is infrastructure, 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 not motivation, not inspiration. That can maybe help you get started in the race, but to continue onward, you need infrastructure. And infrastructure does not mean some strict, crazy meal plan, bodybuilder's lifestyle, which is fine. I have friends that are bodybuilders, or some crazy high intensity trainer barking motivation at you. If you like it, once again, do your thing. Instead, we need something a little more nuanced, a little more subtle, that's going to work in the background. We need something that fits perfectly with our psychology, something that fits perfectly with how we are wired. We need something that is going to help leverage us to perform even better. And this is where the shift starts to happen. And so instead of willpower, we shift over to design. Instead of tactics, we shift over to systems. Instead of chaos, we create a standard of performance. And we'll get to that later. And the best part of this is you do not need to overhaul your life. This starts with 3 levers. And so those 3 levers that I want to get into, number 1 is going to be light optimization and discipline. And number 2 is a standard of performance. Number 3 is accountability and a support system. And that can mean a lot of different things, which we will get into. Now, the first one is light optimization. And this one is probably going to be a little different because if you notice, I didn't have anything in here on exercise or fitness or food or anything like that. And this is why. Food and exercise are secondary inputs. And they only become a focus once your environment is optimized. And the reason why I say this is because light is a variable that's going to impact nearly every single facet of our life. And so in this context here, in this training here that we're speaking of, I'm speaking of natural light specifically through sunlight within the first hours of waking. And just to say something like this probably sounds way too simple, way too easy, way too good to be true. But light is one of the most overlooking drivers of fat loss, of our focus, of our energy regulation, of our mood, of our relationships, of our performance as leaders. Light's not just illumination, as I said in a previous video, it's biological information. And so I know many of us here, including myself, there's various superfoods that we'll consume. But not making sunlight part of your nutritional regimen, or I should say making sunlight part of your nutritional regimen. This will activate you on an entirely new level because all those other levers that you're pulling right now are going to be further amplified once you do this. Now, I'm not going to go into every intricate detail here. I don't want to keep this video super long. But from a high level standpoint, I am going to explain a little bit of why this matters and why this is actually happening. And so I think I have some of the stuff on the bottom blocked off, but I will exceed on mine and I'll go over that. Now, when we have light that enters our eye, especially within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking up and getting out there, it's going to activate a special set of cells in our retinas that are called IPRGCs, which stands for intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. And if you want to play a game, try to repeat that word 5 times really fast. But anyway, I've learned this a while ago, and our eyes are a clock. It's not just a camera. And so our retina is a neuroendocrine, it's a metabolic organ, and it's going to help regulate our circadian rhythm. And this happens through those IPRGCs that I just mentioned. And so now these IPRGCs are going to send a signal to our brain's master clock, I should say. And our brain's master clock is known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is another fancy, fun word to say. You can just say SEN. And think of this as the master regulator that syncs our peripheral clocks on all 25,000 plus genes. And so a symphony is essentially happening here that's taking place, and the rest of our biology is being orchestrated. And I'm going to show you and tie this into how this affects not only just your performance, but also your weight loss as well. So stick with me. So various things are going to be activated here. Various things are going to be synced with this early morning light exposure. Number one is cortisol production. This is your natural energy hormone. This is also going to mobilize fatty acids, melatonin suppression. So you're alert during the day, you're sleepy at night, but also getting this morning light is going to help melatonin later at night as you get sleep. So we have a dopamine release. And when you think of dopamine, think of motivation and drive. We have a testosterone regulation. And more specifically, that most people are familiar with, that they connect with when it comes to our fitness, our physique, and our weight, is insulin sensitivity, glucose control. This is a huge part of metabolic health and weight management. And another interesting one here is beta endorphins, which I thought was interesting to list here because sunlight produces natural opioids, and a deficiency in these things has been linked to addiction and mood disorders. So this is just me spitballing some things. I think I'm correct, but I think light exposure, the lack of it in people, has led to a lot of our mental health problems in this world that have been up. And this is extremely important to entrepreneurs, to other execs, because mental health issues run rampant in the C-suite, even if we don't hear about it a lot. And I've written a couple articles on it. I've interviewed a couple people on it for those articles. And so it's more rampant than we think. And especially with entrepreneurs, I forgot the number, so I'm not going to recite it, but with entrepreneurs and mental health, it's extremely high compared to the general population as well. And so I think this is one of the low levers that we can pull. Am I saying it's going to solve everything? No, but it's an easy thing to do. It's free. It's accessible to everyone. So why not do it? And so lastly, fat metabolism itself, there's something called POMC activation. So to sum all that up, when you have no sunlight, you have less melanopsin activation, which means less POMC expression there, which leads to impaired fat burning signaling. Now, I'm not saying that you're not going to burn any fat at all. It's just not going to be as efficient. So your ability to break down fat, your appetite regulation, your fat storage, these things are all connected with light and our metabolism. And so if you remember anything out of that whole thing there, just remember this. Your ability to burn fat efficiently and consistently is downstream of your light exposure. So light is our master input. And so morning sun, preferably first thing, this is going to help entrain your rhythm. Blue light at night is going to destroy that. Or I should say, throw it off as a little softer of a word. But we'll get to that in a bit. And so I really want to get this point across, that fat loss is not just about macros and movement. If fat loss is really just about macros, then there's thousands of new diet books every year that come out. There's thousands of new workout programs, new workout books that come out every year. I don't really see the stats dramatically changing for the better. So you have to wonder, if that's the case, all we do is talk about food and exercise, but things don't seem to be getting better. There has to be something else. And this is the environment, and this is the light. which is what we're talking about here. And so it all starts with that. So yes, you can still burn fat through fasting. Yes, you can still burn fat through exercising. You need to do those things. Those things are good. I do those things a lot. But you're leaving a massive win on the table by by avoiding this and not taking advantage of this. And it also is going to help our everyday general performance. So it's going to help us perform better as a leader, as a husband, as a father, as a mother, as a wife, all these things. Now, I'm going to stay on topic. I'm not going to diverge too much, but I do believe that this is going to become more of a mainstream acceptance and understanding sooner than later, because the information's out there for whatever reason. It hasn't been abundantly shared, to put it nicely. But I think a lot of our chronic illnesses are due to a dysregulation of our natural biological rhythms, which, on another side note, the time change. This it's terrible. They need to vote on that, and we need standard time. But now for leaders though, and for those who you have weight to lose and health to really dial in, this step is even more critical for you. It's one of the most important things you can do. There's so many great biohacks out there. There's peptides, um, peptide bioregulators, so many great things out there. But this thing here isn't just solely giving you maximum output with minimum drag. It's going to enhance and improve so many other things that you're doing with your health and your fitness already. But I want to go to the other part of the day, the bookend part of the day. And there's a flip side. And this is getting too much blue light at night from screens, LEDs, overhead lighting. So those same retinal cells that we talked about earlier, your body is still going to think it's daytime, which sounds like a cool thing. You know, your alertness is going to remain high, but this isn't ideal at night, because this is when you're needing to wind down. This is when our natural rhythms is supposed to be winding down. So our body is being artificially stimulated. And so just a few hours of blue light in the evening can affect your ability to handle carbohydrates. And there's tons of research on this. You know, blue light at night isn't just making it harder to fall asleep. It's priming your body for increasing insulin resistance, increasing weight gain, hunger pains, which is late night snacking. If you just wonder, man, why am I so hungry all the time? I'm just reaching for stuff late at night. And throwing your hormones in all sorts of different ways, and then mood instability as well. There's a great documentary by Dr. John Ott, and this was pertaining to kids and ADHD. And I think everyone should go check that documentary out. He has a great book as well. And his experiment is eye-opening in terms of just the impact light can have on those kids and their behaviors. And if you think about this, though, for most of human history, our light sources were the sun, the fire, and the moon. And then after sunset, darkness signaled to our bodies to shift gears. And normally this is what happened. The melatonin was going to rise, cortisol was going to drop, metabolism is slower, and our repair systems kicked in. And so now you can understand that if our metabolism is naturally going to slow down when it gets darker, but we're eating some of our largest meals late at night, we're snacking late at night, you can easily see why this can lead to some weight issues, because we're consuming a lot of calories that are not going to get burned off late at night, whereas in the daytime, it's more ideal to have those heavier meals. And so we're flooded with artificial light, especially the blue rich light from the LED screens and overhead that I mentioned earlier. And we're not just confusing our circadian rhythms, it's throwing everything else off, especially our weight. And so some of the light behaviors that you can do here, these are very basic ones that you can do, but this will give you all the big rocks of it, probably 90% or so. First thing for everyone, I recommend this to everyone, clients and everything. 20 to 30 minutes of natural light in the morning. And when you're doing this light exposure in the morning, no glasses, no contacts, no sunglasses, none of that stuff. We want our eyes to get hit with those rays. And so unless you have I forgot the name of the company. There's a couple of companies out there that have glasses that actually let the rays still get in there. But most of you are probably not going to have those. So do this with no glasses and no contacts. And I have a whole spiel on sunglasses. I'm not going to go into that ramble right now. And also during this time, in between meetings, if you can, step outside and get some UVA, some UVB exposure. I think a lot of people are not familiar with the different types of, or the different spectrums of light and the benefits that each of those bring. Like the light that you get in the morning, say at sunrise, it's a different spectrum than it's going to be maybe at 2 o'clock. Each is beneficial, right? Because the light at 2 o'clock, for example, this is where you're going to get more of your vitamin D compared to you're not going to get that at 5:30 a.m. But there's still benefits to each of those. And I recorded a video maybe a month or two ago on different phases of sunlight and the benefits of that as almost like an introductory to this. And so at nighttime, start to dim your environment 2 to 3 hours before bed. Use blue light filters on your screen. So things like F-Lux, things like Iris are free, I believe. And you can just use those on your computer. And so as you're working at night, your screen is going to start to get dimmer as the sun goes down, depending on your location. Now, if you're a designer, it goes without saying, be mindful of this because the color is going to be a little different. And lastly, you can also wear red or orange tinted blue blockers. Now, you see I have an orange pair on right now. Red is going to completely block everything. Orange is probably a little step below that. And you'll see some clear ones, but the clear ones aren't really doing that much. So I don't really see a need to get those. But these are small changes. And these are pretty inexpensive. And most of these are actually free. But they're going to make a massive change for your health, not help. And so the second lever that I want you to think about here is what we call a standard of performance. And so I want to go back to 1978 for the sports people. We'll talk about the San Francisco 49ers, Hall of Fame coach Bill Walsh. And the 49ers were terrible, absolutely horrible. I wasn't born then, but I read his book. And they were 2-14. And then within 2 years, they're Super Bowl champions. And I first learned about this concept in his book called The Score Takes Care of Itself. And it's a fantastic book. It's a fantastic concept that has stuck with me till this day. But Walsh described this standard of performance as a way of doing things. It was a leadership philosophy that is rooted in core values, that's rooted in principles, that's rooted in ideals. And here's some of the interesting things. Coaches tucked in their shirts. Players couldn't sit down on the practice field. Quarterbacks held the ball in a specific way. Linemen and receivers were analyzed with extreme attention to detail. Even the locker room culture was scrutinized. No smoking, no fighting, no profanity. And here's why this matters to weight loss. And this is how this connects with this. It's tempting when you're going after something to fixate on the future. In this context here, you're imagining maybe a slimmer version of yourself, maybe a stronger, more muscular version of yourself, maybe a more energetic version of yourself, maybe a person that walks into the room and you command a presence from the moment you walk in without even saying one word. And while vision is important, because we must go there in our mind before we get there physically, you can't live there. Because the future is actually shaped by the daily details that you do. And the daily details is all in the present moment right now. So Walsh couldn't predict exactly what the 49ers record was going to be, when they were going to win the Super Bowl. There's too many uncontrollables. But he could control the practice structure, the player behavior, the process standards. These are the things that he could control. So a lot of us, maybe you got 10 pounds to lose, maybe you got 15 pounds to lose. It doesn't matter. You can't control when that's going to exactly come off. Of course, people can give estimates and all of that. But what you can control is daily behaviors, daily decisions. You can control the foods you're going to eat, what you put into your mouth. You can control and make a decision that you're going to move every day, regardless, first thing in the morning before the day gets out of control. I always say that high performance health, it's not built on our best days. It's sustained by the invisible systems that we follow on our worst days. These are the things that we're building when no one's watching. What we do, how we build in the dark, ultimately determines what is shown in the light. And so some of your daily health standards here. This is something that's going to be completely customizable to your situation. But regardless, we all need some sort of standards. And as I mentioned earlier, we can't control exactly our time, our finishing times for a marathon, how we're going to finish the Ironman, how we're going to, when we're going to put on that muscle, when we're going to lose that fat. We can estimate, but we can't control how we eat when we travel. We can control and say, hey, our standard is going to be we're fasting when we're in the air. No alcohol, no food. We're not going to do none of that. We're going to fast when we're in the air. We can say that when I land, I'm getting light exposure. And if I'm near a park, I'm going to go take advantage of grounding as well and put my feet to the earth. We can come up with those things. We can have some more standards, and these are the ones that I use, that I don't have 2 bad meals in a row. So when I'm traveling to a different place, you want to enjoy the local cuisine. You maybe you're out with dinner with colleagues or clients. Maybe you use that meal to enjoy yourself. But the next meal, you're back on whatever standard and plan that you had. So you have a nutrition playbook. You think of this like a sports team. What's in your nutritional playbook? We all have different ones. Some of the things that you can throw in your playbook is protein is at the core of my meal. And then the other macros is going to be divided up and thought about depending on what my goals were, maybe, depending on if it's a training day or a non-training day. Those little things right there. When it comes to our exercising, my standard is, for example, I have 12 workouts per month minimum. So that means I'm going to work out 3 times each week at an absolute minimum, no matter what. It's non-negotiable. Maybe I'm going to cut off caffeine at 2 p.m. or 4 p.m., whatever. Hydration, first thing in the morning with light exposure. That's my standard. I have 30 ounces of water, 20 ounces of water that's waiting for me. I do that before anything else, before grabbing my phone or anything. We must define our standards, and we cannot leave them up to chance. We cannot leave them up to randomness, because especially in our world, and you guys's, chaos is going to happen. Uncertainty is a part of the deal. And so the less you have to think about what you do with your nutrition, what you do with your training, what you do with your sleep protocol, the less you have to think on that, you can put and use that energy towards your business. You can also use that energy to be more present with your family and with your kids. And so the third one here is going to be accountability and support, having some sort of accountability system. And so if you think about this in business, you have a legal, you have finance, you have strategy, you have operations. But for a lot of us, when you think about your health, many are flying what I say solo. And many are flying solo because one, it's not that you don't care, but a lot of times we've been trained to believe that this is something that we should be able to handle on our own, that we can just do something like this passively. And oftentimes I believe that belief's a trap. And it's one of the biggest reasons that high performers end up stuck, spinning, or slowly, what I call declining. It's almost like a dam that has small cracks, but the cracks are so insignificant at first that Water's not going to leak out, and a lot of times you're going to overlook it. But then over the course of time, that small crack, that small leak keeps compounding, and it gets a little bigger, and then all of a sudden a little drip of water comes out, and then bam, it's gradually, and then it's suddenly. And that's how it is with health. Now, men especially, I speak on this myself a little bit, we tend to treat problems in general, but a lot of times health as well, we treat it like this solo mission. And things get tough, we hunker down, we clam up even more. I do think women do a much better job of dealing with problems in situations where, and finding people to get involved with, to help them with. Whereas us men, we tend to hunker down and isolate ourselves, and we tend to just try to grind harder, grind ourselves out. But I think Tim Grover said it in his book Relentless, that if you're just always grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding, eventually you're going to turn it into sawdust. And that whole notion has never left my mind since reading that book. Fantastic book, by the way. So we isolate ourselves. When you're isolating yourself, you can't see the big picture because you're at ground zero. And so everything typically can seem like an emergency. There's no clarity. There's no structured feedback. And you're just at a very vulnerable state. And so accountability is not accountability is leverage. It's going to help with consistency. It's going to help because a lot of times it's easier to let ourselves down than it is to let others down. As crazy as that sounds, I've seen it too many times. I even thought about it with myself. And so this is a great way to have some built-in momentum and to compound your results. Now, different forms of accountability that we can do. Number one, of course, is if you're into tech, you can use wearables, you can use different trackers, you can just weigh yourself every morning. But, whether it's your HRV, whether it's your sleep, whether it's glucose monitoring, whatever those things are, and you're having these things, not to obsess of them, but to actually create awareness, to have something top of mind. Because as we mentioned at the very beginning of this talk, health is invisible until it's not invisible. And this is a way to make health a little more visible, a little more tangible, a little more less likely that we won't take it for granted, that we'll keep it top of mind and actively invest in our health instead of passively. And quarterly reviews is another example that you can do. You do it for your business a lot of times. And I think we should have quarterly reviews for our biology as well. What you have to review is up to you. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that there's no one size fits all. And accountability is different. Accountability is not just a coach. You don't have to have a coach to hold you to a standard when life gets chaotic. You can have a spouse. I actually think one of the most important things that you can do when you're going after like a weight loss goal, for example, is to get the people closest to you on board, get them on your team. Because sometimes I've seen where they're unintentionally the ops, we can use that word, and you're trying to make all these food changes, but you have all this delicious food around you, and they want you to eat it because that's what you used to eat. And so I think one of the first things you can do is say, hey, this is my goal. I'm trying to do this. I need your help in X way and your support, right? That's going to make the world of difference. Because a lot of times fitness becomes harder for some people because we start to have fitness on one side of the aisle and then we have a personal life, and these two things clash instead of symbiotically merging together, but they're clashing instead. This is peer groups, especially for leaders at the top. You can be lonely, you can have isolation. And I've talked on this as well. So having some people who are in the trenches with you is another way of accountability. So there's many different forms of accountability, and I think we all need some form of accountability and support. And lastly, it's a way to be competitive, especially if you have peers who are in your accountability group. It's a competition. And so the recap here is most execs, most founders, high-level leaders, you're not going to struggle because of laziness. That's the last thing on the board. It's more of a struggle because maybe you tried to tackle a complex system, with no strategy, no feedback, no real support, or you tackle this complex system, this complex lifestyle that has a little more intricacy to it. You've used very generic, broad strategies that is applicable maybe for an average individual. But if you're not living an average lifestyle, then you shouldn't be using average strategies that average people use. So finding congruence that matches with your biology, but also more importantly, your psychology is essential here. And having an approach that's tactical. So no random workouts, no just random, I just do something. No reactive habits. I'm waiting until health is visible and it's a problem, or just throwing random supplements. And so our three big key pillars for weight loss. Energy is not just physical, it's circadian and biophysical. Consistency does not come from trying harder. You do not need to just keep grinding harder, more high intensity workouts. It comes from defining your standards first and foremost. And transformation is not going to happen in isolation. It's going to happen with structure and support and a community around us, the right people. Who those people are, that's all dependent upon you and your particular situation. And so there's a lot of preliminary work that I think people should do. And it might sound, why do I need to do all this preliminary work with my health? And the reason why is because we want this thing to go on autopilot. Because when we get this on autopilot and we get these systems working right, now we can reallocate all this energy to other things that are enjoyable for us, such as our family, such as growing our businesses, pouring into other people, mentoring, whatever it is. You don't want to be thinking about what am I going to do with my food, my exercising, and all that kind of stuff. And so, lastly, if you are done winging it and you would like any type of support, and you maybe want help to install any type of system when it comes to that that's supported by a team so you can focus on what you matter, always feel free to send me a message. You can DM me and we can set up a time to talk. But until next time, stay awesome, be limitless, and most importantly, optimize today so you can lead tomorrow. Peace.